Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ with Tim's Nation to bring you another video for my cronies. In this little video series, I've been covering all of the Canoptek units. So far, we've done Scarabs. Previous in my videos at the early part of the edition, I did one on Doomstalkers. We're going to revisit them, as well as one on the Canoptek Reanimator, which I'm really excited to talk about all of his tools and utility. Today, it's going to be on Canoptek Wraiths, a staple of Necrons for many, many editions as the competitive builds. In most editions, they were a very bulky, durable unit that most armies just didn't have the weapons to be able to deal with. Whether they were sitting on a 3-up invuln or just now with the 4-up invuln last edition, these guys were really, really tough to pick up and move from the table. Also combined with some very vicious weapons that only these units had access to, whether it was a higher strength or higher damage output than some of the other units in their close combat weapons they may have had. Their speed and usual ability to be ghost-like and float through units and walls and everything else was so valuable in previous editions. This edition, they've changed drastically. And while their role may have changed, I think their value is still there. And that's what I want to cover and talk about today with these guys. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell for notifications. Get notified on all the content that we put out here on the channel, including the rest of the Canoptek videos and the inevitable battle report where me and Lane will go toe-to-toe, and I'll be bringing back the revived and reanimated Canoptek Harvest. All right, so we've talked about all that. Now it's time to talk about our friends, the Canoptek Wraiths. So the Canoptek Wraith, its base profile is very similar from what we had before. It has a move characteristic of 9 now, which is quite a bit slower than it used to be. Toughness 6, 3-up save, 3 wounds, leadership 8, which is kind of rough, especially for a Canoptek unit. These guys should be, you'd feel very, very autonomous and should probably have a better leadership. These guys are ones that are maintaining the dynasties and kind of functioning on their own. They are true, like soulless robots in some natures. And an objective control value of 2, which is nice to see on these guys. Being able to have a little bit better objective control value is definitely a blessing. Now, we're going to jump over to the abilities first, because this is kind of, this is where a lot of it changes. What we're expecting to see probably from Wraiths as we've seen in previous editions versus what we got now. So first of all, they have the reanimation protocol, which is great. Now the new reanimation protocol, these guys are going to be able to use it much, much better than they could in the past. Since they have 3 wounds, it'll be a lot easier to get models back when these guys survive. And they have a 4-up invulnerable save, as we saw last edition, and it's very, very nice. These guys also have Beast, Fly, Canoptek, and Wraith's keyword. Most importantly is Beast, so that they are able to travel through runes, something that Canoptek Scarabs and other units are not able to do. So these guys can still get into a rune and pounce from there. Now, Wraith form. Wraith form has changed from what we're used to in the past, but typically Wraith form in the past was kind of where we were getting our invuln from and some other defensive buffs. Wraith form now is, each time this unit ends a normal move, you can select one enemy unit it moved over during that move and roll a dice for each unit, for each model in this unit. For each 4-up, that enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. So the more guys that you have in the unit, the more shots you have at this. It's, 3 guys, 3 dice, 4 guys, 4 dice, etc., etc. Doesn't matter the unit you're going over. It matters about your unit size on how many dice you get to roll. And it is a 50-50 shot 4-up for getting a single mortal wound, which on paper sounds kind of underwhelming. I mean, you have a 6-man unit of these guys, and you fly over a unit, and you do roll the dice, you get 3. So you do 3 mortal wounds, and you maybe pick up a single Terminator out of that. Not that impacting, not to mention the fact that you have to move over the unit. Now, moving over the unit, that's one thing that we see a couple abilities have, and over the years, one way that moving over a unit looks on paper versus the way you can utilize it is quite different. All right, so let's take a second and just look at that real quick. I want to talk to you guys solely just on the table, take a look at how you can move over a unit and it realistically be practically no penalty at all. All right, so in order to do this, we want our Wraiths right here to do mortal wound damage to the Grey Knights over here by Wraith form. However, they cannot complete their move to all go over the models and end anywhere behind them because they're all spread out. So in order to still do this, what we are instead going to do is we're going to move our 9 inches directly forward. Now, somewhere within the 9 inches, it's like right about here, is where our move would stop. And we would technically land right on top of the model. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to just move barely over the model a little bit, and then move back. This way we finish more than an inch away from the unit that we'll probably end up charging, and do the same with the other 2 models. So what the models did was it moved over and then moved back, legally moving over this unit so it can use the extra mortal wounds on a Wraith form. So that's an easy way to be able to use the Wraith form ability and not really damage yourself and not put yourself in too bad of a position or have to advance to fully execute it. You just need to be able to scoot and then go back to where you were, hopefully within an inch, and then be able to execute your charge. So that's the first step of doing mortal wounds and what these guys do. And these guys, I feel like their role has changed from being a tar pit to being a very, very precise, potentially killing machine. And that's where we go into now. It's guns. Because, surprise, surprise, Wraiths have guns. Wraiths can shoot. Now, I know some people say, well, wait, they had guns in the prior edition. These guns are the same weapons they had before. Yes, but for the most part, we were never spending 10 points on a single shot with a Melta that hit with a 4 and you had to be 12 inches away. It just was never really worth it. There were so many better things you could spend that 10 points on. So now they're free. I say free loosely because you do pay for the premium for the unit as it is. But the Wraith comes with 2 gun variations that we had in previous, but now because they're free, there's no reason to not take them. So the first of these guns is my personal favorite right now, and that's the Particle Caster. And we're going to talk about that one more, so probably than Transdimensional Beamer. So we'll cover, let's talk about the Transdimensional Beamer first, okay? Transdimensional Beamer has no special rules whatsoever. It is just a single shot at 12-inch range, needing a 4 to hit, because once again, we're Canoptek, and Canoptek units have significantly lower accuracy in a lot of ways. So we have a 4 to hit, strength 4, AP 2 for flat 3 damage. Okay, flat 3 damage, pretty cool. You know, we don't, outside of like the Doomsday Arc, the Doomstalker, and things like that, we don't have a lot of things that go over in that damage, but it's a single shot at a 4 up that is strength 4 on top of it. So even so, some of the targets that you're going to want to hit with this guy, you're probably not going to fail to wound. You know, some of the tougher targets that have multi-wounds, that's when you're going to fail to wound, and it's not going to matter as much. So let's talk about the Particle Caster, which not only do I like the Particle Caster because I do feel like it is a strictly better option versus the first one, I feel like this has a lot of cool play. So this has devastating wounds and pistol. So even when you're in combat, you can shoot this. Devastating wounds, 3 shots, 2s to hit, 2s for a Canoptek unit to hit, strength 5, AP 0, 1 damage. I'm not even worried about the strength 5. I'm looking at the fact that this is 3 shots per guy that hits on 2s. So you get the majority of your hits, of your shots even, are going to hit on 2s, are going to hit. So you're probably going to have a 3-man squad, 9 shots, you're going to have 7, 8 hits, which means you're going to be throwing a couple of dice, you're going to hit a few mortal wounds. And if your dice happen to go hot there, that's going to be quite a few mortal wounds. So first of all, you swept over the guys and you did mortal wounds by moving over the unit. So maybe 2 mortal wounds there. Then in the shooting phase, you got another 2 mortal wounds out of that. So it's 4 mortal wounds, plus the wounds from the pistol that it is a strength 5 pistol. So T5 units wounding on 4s, toughness 4 units, you're wounding on 3s, even better. And that still makes them have to make saves. I mean, your opponent throws dice, some of those are going to pop up 1s and 2s, even for a power armor. So there's some damage that you're getting in there from these guys. That's enough to pick up quite a couple of models from even some tougher units like a squad of Terminators. If you go and sweep 4 or 5 mortal wounds over them, you're taking out one guy and then making them very scared to start making those 2-ups. Because if you can get that 6th piece of damage through right in before you've even charged, you're taking 2 Terminators out of a squad right away, and then you charge. And these are Wraiths. Wraiths can fight in combat. We know that. So Wraiths do have a pretty decent combat profile, minus the ability to hit. So Wraiths have the Vicious Claws and the Whip Coils, both of which I actually really like, even though the Whip Coils don't have AP. So the Vicious Claws are 4 attacks with a weapon skill 4, strength 6, -1, 2 damage. While the Whip Coils double your number of attacks, giving you 8 attacks, also hitting on 4s. Strength 4, AP 0, 1 damage. Now, the only thing that I think the Vicious Claws kind of trump the Whip Coils on is because we have a lot of access into some stronger 0 AP effects. You know, when you look at the 0 AP factor, what are you sacrificing? In some aspects with like the Necron Warriors, we're looking at, okay, it's the base level gun on a Necron Warrior. So you still have 24-inch range, you're still strength 4. It's running in the realms of a bolter, which is your basic infantry weapon. Now, when you start looking at things like Immortals, you know, they have the Gauze Blaster that gets has AP to it, as well as a better strength. You're looking at the more elite units and the more elite guns for weapons in general, just weapons in general. For Wraiths, when you look at that, you look at these guys being a little more towards the elite side. Then you start looking at their weapons and going, okay, what am I sacrificing for this versus other units in the army? And what I mean with all that is, when you take the Whip Coils, you're sacrificing a higher strength. Because strength 4, you know, you're looking at 4s versus the median of toughnesses in the environment. Anything else, you're going to be needing 5s or even 6s to do damage. AP 0 means that, again, you're going to be on their base saves. So at this point, the only thing you're gaining is the fact that you're doubling your number of attacks and getting 8 attacks. So what targets are you looking at hitting, are the Wraiths looking at hitting? With all the mortal wound damage that they can do, with the particle caster and the Wraith form attacks, these guys are more fitted to be able to attack tougher targets like custodies and things that you're not able to get damage through with some of your conventional fire, because they're just going to wall you and make saves forever. So you need reliable mortal wound output. And as we go through the Necron units and as we go through a lot of the things in the Codex, there isn't a lot of mortal wound output and damage. There's a couple things here and there, little ways that you can, an enhancement here or an offset ability there, that looking at those devastating wounds really does help. It's one of the selling points of the Doomsday Arc, as being one of the very few long-range weapons in the game in general to be able to put down devastating wounds like it can. So when we start to go down that rabbit hole of, oh, this is a Necron unit that can do mortal wounds, to me, the Vicious Claws are going to be the choice that I take. Reason being, even though it's less attacks, the higher strength and the AP 1 means that I'm giving a better chance for that tougher target to fail that one hit and get potentially more damage through than relying on them to fail a 0 AP hit multiple times in order to get that same output. Now, I haven't even mentioned stratagems with these guys. These guys cannot be joined by a character. There's no character that can join Canoptek Wraiths. So the only way that you're going to get the count as having a character with you for the +1 to hit or for the inherent buffs of having a character is by having the Sovereign nearby. So otherwise, you're looking at just the base level of the stratagems, which isn't necessarily bad. You still have D3, not D3 +1, for getting a model back. Well, if you need that +1 to get a model back without damage, then you probably needing to just roll that high. I wouldn't rely on that as much. But having that 1 damage is nice. Same with being able to charge in and do damage with Hungry Void. I mean, if you have the Necron character with the unit, you're improving the AP by 1. Otherwise, you just get +1 strength. So having that character nearby is kind of crucial to it. So you know what? I gotta say, take it back. It is very, very much some value to be able to have that Sovereign nearby to be able to pump these guys up a little bit. Just so that you're able to trigger into the higher effects of those stratagems. Being able to get that +1 AP, if you're going to look at AP1 on the whip coils, I would still like to see the AP2 on the Vicious Claws, especially with things like, Armor of Contempt, True Silver Armor, being able to knock those things away. Being able to get that extra +1 could be crucial. I can't lie. Trying to undersell it, but it's not even there. Having that +1 all the time on a reanimation is just going to be huge. It's going to, all of a sudden you have one guy on 1 wound and you roll a 1. Okay, well, if you roll that 1, you just healed and you didn't get a guy back. But now, because you have that, bam, you heal the guy back up to full, and now you got a Wraith back on the board. So yeah, there's a lot of value to be had around that. Right now, what I'm considering with these guys is I'm considering taking 3 3-packs. So taking them big in bulk means that you can get more off of their hit for their damage and where their damage gets put out. I want these guys because, 1, they have the beast capability, so they can go through runes and stuff like that. I want them to be able to get across the board and sneak into my opponent's territory towards an objective that's medium to light defended and be able to just pick up what's on there, no matter what it is. So that's the role that I kind of feel with the Wraiths, especially because with the Canoptek build that I'm looking at, the Scarabs are not going to be as flexible with going into runes and stuff like that. So I want the Wraiths to be able to fill that role. Outside of Canoptek lists, with Necrons as a whole, I still like the idea of them being able to fulfill that role of being a 3-man that can swing to the outside, hit, possibly remove off an objective, and then whatever casualties they take, they can sit back, hide, and reanimate and resurrect back to full health to swing out and do it again. By having the MSU of them, the smaller squads of them, I feel like it's going to be easier for me to hide from towering units like Imperial Knights and Wraith Knights after I've made combat, after we've gotten rid of those units, and also a lot easier to finesse them around the board and stay hugged up to terrain and hide them until the point where I want to attack with them. So that's the build I'm looking at first with them. I guarantee there will probably be a time where I'll bulk up the unit, take 6-man, take 5, take to full 6-man of them. But being the fact that you can't buy 4 or 5, you have to either buy 3 or you go all the way up to 6. Yeah, I could take less of them and just spend the points to it, but that doesn't, I feel penalized if I'm spending so much more for that unit and not taking the full squad. And when I take the full squad, it's going to be a lot harder to hide them. And as long as one model can be seen, the whole squad can be shot at. Yes, they may gain cover, but there's some weapons I just don't even want to be hit by at all. A Wraith Knight's Wraith Cannon, that is a really nice way of ignoring cover entirely and just saying, okay, you have cover. Here, take 2d6 mortal wounds and have a nice day. All right, guys, so we have two more Canoptek units that we're going to be covering. The Canoptek Doomstalker as well as the Canoptek Reanimator. The Canoptek Reanimator is going to be a long one because the Canoptek Reanimator is probably one of the biggest backbones of the Necron army. It's almost at a realm where you'd have to say it's kind of an auto-include. Even at 95 points, it still runs into that column of being an auto-include for how much power it brings. And guess what? It's a Canoptek unit, so it falls perfectly into this build. So yes, I will be bringing Canoptek Reanimators, and yes, we're going to be talking about Reanimators and Doomstalkers here real soon. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.